Hey, it's me. Good afternoon. I'm Brian, the host for Music Biz 101 on tour managing today. Um, this is something new and exciting for me, but big thanks and shout out to Reed at Rootfire family for the invite. These series have been so far pretty informative, and if you haven't had a chance to check out Dan Sheehan's segment last week or Igor Katz the week before, two very knowledgeable guys that I'm lucky enough to run into and do business from time to time. But also, if you guys, there's a couple links below. If you want to make any donations, all the funds that are going to be raised during the segment is going to go into the Rootfire General Fund to help out artists in need. If you send it direct to me, I'm going to just hand it out to my crew. It's a tough time for them, and I want to look out for them. Today, we're going to go over a lot of things today, from theory to practical knowledge of tour managing. It's a complex position with some pretty good rewards if it's done well. Myself, I've been tour managing Revolution for the last 8 years. Professionally, I've been on the road since 2006. So if I do the math on that, it's like 14 years, 15, 14, yeah, 14 years. I also manage the Expendables and Authority Zero. Also work with many other artists from time to time. So it's just not, I'm very flexible or try to get wherever work where work needs to be done. But I'd like to start off a little bit, go back, give you some of my background, let you know uh, what created a foundation where I'm at today. I mean, even go back all the way into high school schooling. I went to high school in Germany on a military base at a British school. That built some character, if you can imagine. Moved back to the States, went to college, got a 4-year degree in art. I worked hard during this time with a full-time job and going to school full-time. It was my life, but this is where I learned about how much I put into something is about as much as I'm going to get out of it. Which I graduated with honors, never missed a day of school, and was rewarded a few scholarships that paid for school, which was rad because I graduated with not much debt, and getting that paid off was key for me. As far as my work history, I was fortunate enough. My family has always been in the music business as far as manufacturing side of things go. My dad worked for Yamaha in the 80s and moved on into Kurzweil, Mark IV audio, PV, and Taylor Acoustics at one time. But they also owned and operated a microphone windscreen manufacturing business, where in my early days I would go help out and work. I was the child labor of that. But which exposed me to NAM, which some of you music industry people are going to know. It's the National Association of Music and Merchants in the 80s, which was a very unique experience. I can't say today's NAM was similar to the NAM 30 years ago, but it was a lot of fun. A lot of stories, different time for that. I worked for Fender Germany for a couple of years. I was in their warehouse fixing guitars. I traveled on their custom shop road shows. So I used to do little tours and little things here, and that's really where I started getting my experience for the road for the first time. I worked over at Fender Europe over in England. Did some office administration stuff, some techie stuff. I got to be a fly on the wall for Defender Passport when it was developed. We had the first 5 prototypes in there. It was really cool. We get to kind of just give our input on the way it was designed, but it was the first little PA system that folded up and was nice for a lot of musicians to take around. Built a database to keep track of retail pricing in Europe, and I supported artist relations. Got to work with some cool artists like Peter Green, Radiohead, Scorpion, The Cure, Noel Redding from Jimi Hendrix Band, and so on. A lot of cool stuff when I was 18 years old. So again, very fortunate to have a lot of that under my belt. When I got back to the U.S., I was doing more freelance photo, video work, and did a lot of audio engineering. Got to be the audio engineer for Riviera Broadcast Group for a lot of their live and rare sessions. which was great. It included a lot of sessions with Kobe Calais, Lifehouse, Mary Lampert, Churches, Bourne, Andy Grammer, Zella Day, ZZ Ward, Rixton, Echo Smith, Matt Carney, and many more. That really kind of helped develop my skill for around the mixer and around the audio board. I got to do behind the scenes of Monday Night Football for Como Television out of Seattle. That was, again, starting to get to see a lot of production, how that was all laid out. Worked on a local show in Phoenix, Arizona here, which was called House Party or Cajun House Party, I think, at one time. But yeah, some of you guys remember that from the early 2000s. It was a interesting dance party show weekly. But my full-time gig before 2006, I was IT manager for a college out here. This is where I got to earn, or I went and trained and got my Apple certification. So yeah, I'm a computer nerd, but some of you guys knew that out there. I ran a local Arizona scene site, azpunk.com, with two other very smart guys who I got to learn even more from them. This was before Facebook and MySpace, so this is where everybody went to go figure out, well, what was going on, in the scene. And we used to have our concert calendars and big message boards. But we put out annual compilation albums and also have a local stage at Warped Tour for multiple years. And doing those stages at Warped Tour, this was truly my first taste in live production, getting the audio, getting the staging, getting the bands together and putting all that together. This would have been the early 2000s. But yeah, Kevin Lyman was nice enough to recognize us and give us the opportunity to do what we wanted to do. But during that time, also, I played in a bunch of local bands around here, put out a few albums, and eventually around 2006 is when I went and joined Authority Zero and started playing guitar. I was at the end of 2006. Toured all the U.S. multiple times and all around the world. But before all that, I was doing a lot of weekend warrior stuff. So around 2006, this is where I professionally started touring full time. I quit my full time job, and that was pretty much it. I was an independent contractor at that time. I had to cut ties with all the insurance and started learning how to do all that stuff myself. But it was a good time. So I was happy that I did it. And so, like I said, it's been 14 years I've been out on the road. But when I was out on the road, Authority, we kind of self-managed ourselves through the tours. But I really wanted to step into more of that tour manager role with the guys, and I started learning basically how to advance and how to get started. No one really explained anything to me, so you can imagine I just kind of fumbled around for a couple of tours, but eventually started to get the hang of it, and I got to go tour manage other bands like Black President, which was a nice all-star group of guys. A lot of fun. Did Goldfinger for a hot minute, which during that time, Feldman complimented me that I had a very calm demeanor, and learned sometime after that was a good trait to have. So eventually in 2012, though, my phone rang and it was manager Revolution calling to ask me to fill in on a tour. It was the Give Thanks Tour of 2012. I said, why not? Back history, Authority Zero took the Expendables out on their full U.S. tour in 2007. It was a co-headlining tour, but that's where I met the Expendables manager, Donovan. And I'm sure Donovan's might be watching some of this right now, but he was the key reason, because back in 2012, Donovan was sharing an office with Dean, Revolution's manager at Silverback, and he passed my name along. So that's how I ended up with Revolution. But it was supposed to be a temporary position. And well, here I am 8 years later, still not really temporary, but it was great. I got to grow with the band over the years because it was at a time where they were doing really well on club dates, and really started getting into doing shed and amphitheaters. So I couldn't ask for a better opportunity. But during this time, I still continued to manage Authority Zero, and I even jumped on the road with some other artists like Schoolboy Q. I also did a lot of work where it was needed, again, with like bands like Pennywise, Lagwagon, Good Riddance, just to name a few. But work always found me, and I like to say yes to every challenge. So that kind of set my that's the foundation of how I came to now. If oh, looks like I got a question here. Any memorable moments in Alaska on tour? Ineffable group. What advice should you have for aspiring tour manager? Yes, for a friend. Well, any memorable moments on Alaska tour was well, we went up there for a quick fly date and we broke off and went up to Denali for a couple days. So that was really that's one of the perks of tour managing. If you get out to these locations, sometimes you can extend a couple of days out there and go have a little vacation, knowing that your flight was paid for on the way in and on the way out. Um, Suggestions I have for aspiring tour managers? Well, we're going to get into a lot of that. I mean, I just barely touched on this. This is foundation here, so let's maybe I'll answer that question more towards the end. But yeah, I mean, getting into it, getting into what is tour managing. The joke is I'm a adult babysitter that does accounting, which it's funny, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's a pretty complex job to have. Tour managing is managing all aspects and logistics of the road. I take the ideas and the contracts, agreements, or whatever the artist or management throws at me and figure out how to execute it out on the road. To fix some misconceptions out there, I don't book the shows. Booking agents initiate the agreements and hand them off to me. And I'm happy we got probably one of the best booking agents out there, and Mr. Aaron Pincus. I give him a little shout out there. But I'm also not the band's manager, as far as general management items go. General manager is pretty much the CEO of the organization and overlooks all the departments and pretty much is the person I report to as far as anything goes. I'm just the road aspect of the band out on the road. So excuse me, a little break for water. Mhm. But with management and agent, I think that the three of us is so important that we have such a tight relationship. Um, we need to be able to work closely with each other and back each other up. Having a strong unit like that is going to crush it out there. My advice to anybody that doesn't have that strong relationship, forge it, try to get it out there, try to happen. If it's not going to happen and you don't have the people to back you up, it's probably not the most I would probably be looking for a different situation. Looks like I got some more questions coming in. Was one of the most outrageous things you ever experienced on tour? Yeah, I'm gonna say that for some deeper, more private. There's been a lot of stories out there on the road. Every road dog's got a lot of outrageous stories, but I don't really have a real PG good one to tell on this YouTube channel at the moment. Uh, Let me think about that. I'll come back to that question. How do you get up to speed on insurance related issues? Now, okay, what are we talking about? Insurance related issues. So, Reed, if you get a chance, I'd like to find out, are we talking about health insurance? Are we talking about equipment insurance? What insurance are we talking about? So anyways, got one from Ted. Pacifier Ted's chimed in. Tell him about that work ethic and being disciplined on tour. I'm a lot of that I'm going to get into on here. It's very important. And I treat this job I mean, it's my profession. Anybody who's out there who can't put that emphasis on everything they do like that is really the results are not gonna. I go back to whatever I put into is whatever I get out of it. I try to do everything I can to make sure I keep everything fair, keep everybody informed, educated, and keep this tour running smooth. Um, but yeah, we're going to definitely get into that, and I'll answer that last question towards the end. There, that's another good question. But anyways, if you're getting into tour managing, you're looking at it. It's something that no one ever explained to me, which I was lucky to go through and experience while I was in college, was some prereqs. One being my contract law classes. I can't stress how many tour managers I've taught that open up a contract and just don't know what they're looking at. It's wording could be so tricky, and it could totally dictate the outcome of your night. So, understanding the wording in a contract is huge. Now, I'm not saying go to law school, but I mean, again, I had a chance where was able to jump in a business law class. But yeah, it's so important. The words and, or, if, all these other things. It's just sometimes I find myself explaining to promoter reps and even production managers, hey, this is how this agreement reads. This is how I read it. This is how I understand it. This is how it's supposed to be. So it's very important to understand your contracts, and also don't be fearful of asking questions to the agents. The agents would prefer that. My agent would, if I didn't quite understand. I remember there was a few things I didn't quite understand. I was like, hey, Aaron, can you explain this, how you came to this a deal or this agreement point? And he would explain it to me, and we would discuss it, and then I know how to execute it. But also, I want to go dive in a little theory on the whole contract. I treat each contract and event like it's a partnership deal. It's not a service agreement on either side. It's a partnership to execute a production, and how to settle out from said production basically outlines your evening. If in that contract, you usually will have your writer attached, which helps outline your expectations and hopefully draws a pretty good picture for a local crew and production to help execute. Over communicating is not a bad thing here. And your writer is a document that will be updated all the time. If you don't keep a working document on your computer and you're changing things as you go, you're quickly going to find that your writer is out of date. But all in all, the promoter becomes an extended arm of your organization. They're the local boots on the ground. So treat them like family, be professional, and I'm sure the same respect will be returned. I have many great relationships with promoters around the world, and I like to keep coming back to all these shows and having that relationship. I can name a handful of guys across the country that uh, it's just coming into the shows is so much easier. You know what to expect. They know you. I just can't stress. Just be professional. Treat them like they're part of the family, and it'll go a long ways. Um, Basic accounting knowledge. Uh, if you have a chance out there, maybe online class or community college, just get some basic accounting. This seems to be a weak point in a lot of tours. Learning how to create and understand a simple ledger will help you along the way, and being able to articulate the transactions will save everyone a lot of time. There's not really a good way to shorthand this, and I'm not a mind reader. I mean, I've worked with tour managers to train them, and and it will say merch income, and I was like, okay, merch income. What day? What show? What's this? It's over communicate here as well. You want to set things up so if anything was ever happen, someone else could pick it up and be like, "Oh, I understand what's going on here." That's huge. I scan every receipt. I document every transaction. It's just second nature to me after so many years. But I know it seems like a lot of work at the beginning, but backing up your transactions or ledger without any documentation will be even more of a headache. And I like being able to sleep at night knowing my paperwork is rock solid. I used to use Neat documents. But that system kind of let me down over the years as far as technology and hardware. So I moved over into Dropbox and the scan feature of the app. Super quick and easy. And I scan into a folder system that I build, and I usually will have a cash receipts folder, credit card receipts folder. I have multiple credit cards. I might have I got my bus driver floats. I got my float. I might have someone else's float, but keeping track of all that into different ledgers. And I use Google Docs for keeping all my ledgers in, because if it's always up online, if anything was to happen to my computer, I could just go get a new computer and all my stuff will be right there. Dropbox, Google Apps, and whatever. So, I mean, I could just keep moving on, just keep going. I don't want anything to stop me when I'm on the road. But I would say another tip for something for tour managers who want to are coming in is to try to have a little knowledge in every department. It's a big help. In college, while I was getting my degree, I wanted to be an art director, and one of my instructors said it best: the best art directors know or have experience in every department. So I embraced every chance of learning something new, and I want to be able to support all my crew in what they were doing. I still need to learn a lot of things like lighting. So if anyone out there wants to throw me on tour as a lighting intern, hey, I'm down. We want to do that stuff. Let's see if it's a good stopping point. Let's see if we got some questions. Uh, Realtor, how would a person go from real estate agent to band manager? Asking for a friend. Well, ooh, jumping from realty position, I mean, you already know what it's like to be on your own and as an independent. Um, it's just really just getting out there and getting your feet wet, getting the experience, work with a band that you can work with, that, start doing some weekend warrior stuff if you can, some one-offs and get out there. But, as an independent contractor and real estate agent, and uh, actually, I'm not sure. I believe real estate agents are independent contractors. But anyways, I'm sure you keep track of all your expenses, and from gas to anything you fix up on a house to cash it in. I mean, that right there gives you the basic knowledge of that. I know when you put in offers for houses, you understand contracts and all that. So I'm pretty sure you have a good chance of crossing over. But the other part is getting to know the music business and understanding production, and that's another big thing. And for me, I grew up, I played in bands, I had it all around me, so I was really exposed to a lot of it, which gave me well-rounded knowledge. Duderman. Hey, Duderman. How do you advance the Canada and Europe tours with a local tour director and in the region, or yourself solo? Duderman, that's a good question. I actually have a whole little advanced section. I want to come back to that on that. But for places like Japan, it's great with Japan. We'll have a local interpreter or whatnot in Japan that will kind of they tend to lay out all the shows. We dictate a little bit of what we want or what we need, but we work together and it all gets advanced and taken care of. Europe, we're reaching out to the emails to the promoters, and good thing with English being the international language out there, it helps out. But as far as like Canada's just the same as doing the U.S. in my eyes. It's we're probably gonna end up driving over, flying over. We've done that. We've done quite a few shows in Canada. Let's see. Good questions. Red Rocks versus the Gorge. Well, let's see. Well, definitely not Red Rocks in December. That's a little cold. But Red Rocks is, I have a lot of fun in Colorado. Gorge is, all right, let me put it this way. I like doing shows at Red Rocks and working the production side of things. Gorge, I would love to be a fan and go to the shows there and camp out next to it and just make it a multi-day deal. That would be the way I look at those two venues. Um, Dan Sheehan, who's the best promoter you work with? Well, Dan Sheehan, if you answered my question last week on who's the best tour manager you ever worked with, you might have an answer. So there's your answer. All right, well, let's keep moving on here. I just got some fundamentals and some stuff I just like to cover. Um, my first rule is if, a lot of times I have to remind myself because I have a tendency to have a resting bitch face. And if you look at a lot of my socials out there, a lot of people are making jokes about if I smile. But big thing is don't be a dick. Your band and crew or your road family, I treat them all equal. I treat everybody all the way down to my drivers. A lot of bands, a lot of tours don't even give the truck drivers and bus drivers the acknowledgement that they deserve. Those guys work hard, really, and they're part of the whole tour and production too. You couldn't have the tour without them. It's very important. I just seen a lot of people who don't do that. They put too much emphasis on one department, and no, I'm straight up gonna treat everybody the same. You come to me with a problem, we'll get it handled. Um, it, you know, you're gonna you just have to be patient too as a tour manager. You got to be able to listen and figure out solutions and whatnot. But in the same time, I'm not going to probably please everybody, but I'm gonna try to avoid being a dick about it. So that's my big advice. But I also want to add um, that just need to have that mutual respect out there on the road. Nobody's below. It's everybody's out there. It's family. We're all supporting each other. Respect each other's space. Simple as uh, don't leave your shit out. Keep your area clean. You keep clean and make sure everybody rests and eat. It only gets harder if you don't. Communicate with each other. That's a big thing out there. This includes being able to listen. Um, Sometimes I have to be the emotional punching bag with what's going on out there, and that's fine, and that's just something that comes with the tour managing side of the job. You're your dad out there, and you have to be okay with those things, and you have to be ready. And sometimes, like I said, I have to lay down the law and just can't dwell on things. Can't have anybody dwell on things. You got to fix it. A lot of that stuff it's like cancer on the road, and it'll bring down a tour real quick. Um, so definitely communicate your feelings. And if you don't have a way to be able to talk or discuss things, that's not a really good environment, I don't think. Not in my environments. I recently remember uh, talking with one of my crew guys, and he wasn't sure. He felt nervous about coming to me, and I was just like, "No, no, man, come to me. Let's talk about this stuff. Let's work it out. I don't need you on the stage dwelling on this and putting out that energy, that vibe. It's contagious out there. So we try to keep it going and good positive vibes and good old revolution words there. Uh, but the other thing too I want to touch on is mental health out there on the road. It's a big thing. I've personally had a lot of issues being out on the road. I spent about $150 an hour figuring it out, if you know what I mean. I've been through divorces, deaths, and just about everything imaginable. But I've had a little bit of revelation during this quarantine shelter in place order. I've seen a lot of people talk about their anxiety and depressions of being home. I made a connection that this is similar to what touring artists and crew sometimes go through. I used to come home from tours feeling empty and not knowing what to do. Anxiety would set in, and I would go try to fill the void. It was explained to me that I come from a world of nonstop go, 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 Bryan, 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 I need this, to where where nobody's asking me anything, complete silence. I'm just at home, and it's a very stimulating world to a not stimulating world. So where I made the tie with what I feel like a lot of people are going through is you're working a 40-hour job, 40 plus hour with some of you, even going out, you're just got so much stimulation in your life going on to now you're home. And I only bring this up because I think it's important to recognize and know what you're going through and things to try to do healthy things to, adjust it to fix it. Why I remember there's a part of time I was on the road and I had a lot of anger issues, and because I didn't know how to release all the stuff that was going on. A lot of little depression things, but things that I started doing was, going on bike rides. That was my thing. Hiking, camping, really just looking towards, now I'm even starting to get into yoga recently. And it's those all great outlets, and just be able to recognize those things and be able to adjust them. But there's a lot of support sites out there. um, I know there's going to be some links in the description here. I got MusicCares, who's very supportive. Tour support is very supportive. Tour support actually has, I think you can apply, or I think they have like a monthly fee where you could talk to a counselor and whatnot on there. But if that's one thing I could pass a message along to everybody is that, recognize it, address it, and if you can, try to do something positive about it, and understand the whole what you're going through, and that's just the biggest thing. So another thing on that is, I understand when you're trying to hold on to friendships that you've been gone more than 6 months out of a year. I've learned it's really hard. Things don't always pick up from where you left off. So I started having a lot of bar friends. I was struggling, but I was lucky enough to pull out of it, which some others had the same luck. But again, recognizing it and doing something about it, there's loads of help out there for everyone. And this is 3 out of 4 people that tour really go through these issues. So like I said, use those links, Google, learn, and jump on a bike, go for a long bike ride, get all that negative energy out. So we got some more questions. Oh, Amy Sheehan. Well, outside the music industry, what would be your dream job? Well, I think my dream job probably would be a pilot. I'm in the midst of working on my instrument training right now, and next will be my commercial training. But yeah, that might be. I think that's just something I've just been working on. Mackle, who's the best assistant TM I ever had? Well, Mackle, I want to give that one to you. You get the trophy, bro. Mackle's very big part of, not only is he the DJ on our summer tours, but he also helps out, assist me and the band with everything that we got going on during the day. It's a pretty busy day, and I can't be everywhere at the same time. So Mackle really fills in that void for me. Let's see. I got some other questions here. I'll tackle them towards the end, because I feel like I'm probably have discussing them as I'm going through my whole little deal here. I actually prepared all of my notes and trying to present something. So, but well, I guess with that being said, let's dive back into the practical knowledge of tour managing. Of course, first thing first, you got the planning stages of a tour. For me, usually starts about 10 to 12 months out. For our summer 2020, I'd started in August of 2019. When I get the routing, I lean on the relationships that I have created over the years to secure what I need for that tour that far out. I send a routing to a few bus companies to get some bids going to hopefully hold the buses of our choice. All the good buses get sucked up fast, and I like to try to get the best. Trucking company, they get my routing right away as well to secure our trucks. Last thing I want to do is hunt down some trucks for our production. I need a reliable truck and drivers. That's a big, huge thing. I need my stuff to show up when I need it to show up. And there's too many of these 20 and 40 truck production tours out there sucking them all up. So, it gets to be a little competitive of trying to get the truck and driver. I start talking with my travel agent about 6 months out for routing and plans for our days off. I'm trying to secure 24 rooms a night with bus parking. It's not so easy, a lot of Googling and satellite photos and spying and seeing if we could park a bus at that hotel or not. And then they issue us contracts and we have to go back and forth because, they won't let us out. It's not so easy to get out of contracts when you got 24 rooms. So you want to make sure the tour is not going to change. If there's any hesitant area, I'm going to avoid getting into any contracts for that. And then we start getting bids for audio. That's typically easier for my production manager and myself. We know what we want. We just have to see who can deliver and be efficient. Lighting for us, it's a little longer, a lot of back and forth with design because that's very visual. Usually spend the fourth quarter of 2019 designing, first quarter finalizing, and second quarter we're looking for bids and deciding who to go with. And again, a lot of communication out there, so it's always a lot of competition out there. So it's always eager to secure it. We want to make sure that we get the movers we want, the truss, and if anything we need to build. So then that leads me into, our soft goods, our backdrops or scrims or grills or drum heads. I got, about a couple months out, I start getting those together. But with all these things going on, I do have to secure the crew for the summer for the most part. Most of my crew will come back, and most of my core crew, but we'll always have a few positions to fill. We use word of mouth and sometimes our vendors, and if it comes down to it, Bobnet's a great resource for crew. You just post out a job there, get a lot of resumes, and sift through them and try to get some guys out there. I've discovered quite a few people on there. So again, I think there should be some links down at the bottom there for some of the bus companies I use, lighting, soft goods, and even Bobnet down there. Also, during this planning stage, my production manager and I will be hunting down all our support acts and trying to get their riders and get their audio needs and, back of house needs and letting them know, hey, this is how our day is going to run. We're going to try to squeeze you in here, do this, so they could have an easy day. I want to give everybody a chance to be able to do the best job they could possibly do, and that includes, our support band too. I need to find out what they're traveling in, how many are traveling, and then lay down the law of when I need my guest list from them, and how many merch pieces and so on. Really gets into a lot of little things, but at the end of the day, if we could get all those put together on one page, it's makes the day go by. So let's see, questions. Rider question. My boys have requested mid-tour that they wanted to switch up hospital rider. Thoughts on changing the hospital rider once advances have already been sent out? Well, the hospital rider for us, and I'm going to dive into that. I'm about to get into the advanced section. That could get swapped up. That's not a really big thing. And I don't send out all my hospital riders. I'll get everybody's hospitality rider when I talk to support, and I could guarantee they're sending me about anywhere from $300 to $500 worth of shop, and I need to cut it down to 100. So it's hey, send me what you must haves, and we'll try to take care of whatever you can. And for the most part, I'll work with them. If it's I'm not hard. I'm not sitting there looking up every price and go, oh, this is $100. But if you're asking for 4 bottles of 1942, it's can probably be a no. From Cousins, how do you determine when a support band's TM has earned your respect? Um, I think when you show them compassion or you show them respect, I know what they're going through as a support team. I've been there. You know, listen to all the requests and work with them. And if you guys could work together and give a little and take a little and get to a point, I believe that's what really establishes that respect. Um, any advice for finding a solid merchandise person? We know how important it is to bank on merchandise, but finding a person that can pay and feed is tough. I agree with that. I mean, I agree with that with a lot of the crew guys, but merch is a very demanding position as far as being able to, you know, you got you really need that energy. You need that vibe. You also need a guy that knows how to count in, count out, settle. Use app venue and do all those things. With level the money that Revolution does on their shows, it's a lot of money changing hands. You got to have somebody you could trust. First places I would talk to is we use Via Merch for Revolution for merchandise. They're a good resource for having people around. Also, other bands that are equivalent might not be on the road, but they might have a merch guy that's looking for a gig. So think of anybody that you worked with in the past and maybe hit them up. And honestly, it's really just going to be if that person can really tour with you or not, and you could work with them on. As a tour manager, you should also know how to do that position, so you could really dictate or not dictate, but maybe kind of let them know what your expectations are as far as what you need from them. But that's a good question. It is tough, and I feel you. I mean, I've trying to even find tour managers for some of my bands or front of house or any of those positions. It's not easy because the other thing too is, I always said most of the all the good guys are usually taken. So half the time, uh, you might be you might not want to, but you might be offering a position to somebody that's with someone else, and they might end up leaving and coming to you, and it just happens. It's just nature of the beast. Advances. Let's get into advances. I know we had some questions here on advances, so uh, maybe some of these points will answer them. Advances. I'd like to start 30 days out, and I mean, I would go no. I mean, some places I'm really familiar with might be even 2 weeks out, 2 to 3 weeks out. But for instance, 30 days out is good because you got some venues, some places that might require fire marshal involvement, some special permits, parking, all those little situations that you at least want to get out on the table right away. You might not have your full advance, but at least start communicating that far out so that nothing hits you and there's no surprises. And I'm a very checklist happy person, so I use notes on my Mac and on my iPhone, and I have a date, and then I have like all these little bullet points or all these little check off points for each day. And I'll start off with is my advance email sent? As soon as I send an advance email, check that off. I I will compile all the info from our support and everything we are doing. I highlight all the major items in our rider. I send the schedule for the day. If anybody on here has received my advance emails, I try to cover everything in the first go. I've gotten it down to just a few emails back and forth, and usually completes the advance. But sometimes we gotta get on the phone and figure things out. I work really close with my production manager during all of this. Good to have a second set of eyes, and if you're in luck like Revolution is, we got one of the best guys out there, Mr. Joe King. I'll give him a little shout out for that. He is truly a um, uh, good guy to have on your team. Then my next checkpoint on there is, did the production manager respond? And sometimes I'll get contacts for the venue, and it might be to the promoter rep, and I might not have a production manager, or that production manager's left, and I get a bounce back email, or whatever it is. But as soon as I know I established contact, or I know who it is, I check off the production manager's responded. That to me, it's just important to know that, okay, at least they got my advance, they responded something, And then my next item is schedule. It's a tour. We run on a schedule. I cover everything in my schedule that I send them, from the times the bus shows up, when we have access to the venue, to when our dressing room curfew is. Pro tip, by the way, establish a dressing room curfew if you can. Then it's harder to be kicked out before. A lot of times uh, it's come in handy. It's just nice to know what the expectations are when we're coming in. It's like, hey, we're going to be here an hour after we load out because my guys need a shower and whatnot, and that's when we're going to take off, because they got to staff people and keep security on, or production manager or whoever, to basically babysit you guys. And it's nice just to set an end time for that. Crew call. I need to know how many hands we're going to get: loaders, runners, fork, and forklift drivers. We'll give them minimum specifications. But if you're in a union house, is our minimums meeting their minimums? We're going to have them in at this time. We're going to stagger. What we're going to do, to be efficient with our crew. That's very important. And make sure that our riggers are only up for a few hours. Nothing sucks more than sending riggers back up to change some points, or something like that. But anyways, yeah, I established our crew on there. And then next item on my checklist would be audio. If we are carrying, let them know what we're coming in with, and what we need. If not, establish a local vendor and get some quotes. And some houses, they have pre-hung systems. So basically, you want to know what you're going to be using, what you're working with. And if you don't have like a control package, can we request Avid consoles, Digigo, or whatever your flavor is? Make sure that we got that covered. Those are all important things, because trying to do those things last minute sucks. A lot of you show up at a venue and your console isn't there, and you're not carrying consoles. It might be a $500 trucking fee just to get that console in real quick, plus whatever the console costs to rent. It could just need to be on top of that. Lighting is pretty much the same as the audio, except for the difference I would say is Ken is figuring out the stage could support our production. The size of the stage, the width, with the width, the depth, the trim height, and so on. And I was talking about riggers before. The rigging points. I like to let them know, hey, our production probably has 18 rigging points. What's the weight that your rigging points could support? We want to make sure that we're not going to overweigh their grid, and we want to be safe on that. That's just something that is very important that a lot of people don't think about. A lot of houses are different. Lasers, we carry lasers on our production, so we need to get FAA approval. Some venues have restrictions, and we communicate with the FAA and get their approvals, and either we get their approvals or we're told to terminate within the venue. And that's just the nature of the beast. That's just what we deal with all the time. But so we work with them on that. And then the most important item that any tour band and crew is going to talk about is catering. Now, we on my tours, we're 4 meals a day. We come in, we got breakfast, we got lunch, we got dinner, and we got after show. I'll give them meal counts, how many people we're going to have at breakfast. And it's usually just my headlining and drivers that are at breakfast. Usually support doesn't come in till towards lunch. But lunch I'll feed the whole tour. Dinner will feed the whole tour. After show, that's typically just the headlining band and crew on that. And we're also very lucky with that one. We carry a chef on the road with us, Jack. which I think Jack's watching. I saw him commenting on my stuff earlier. He's great. You know, he takes care of us. He creates a little buffet on the buses. So when everybody's all done loading out and have a little midnight snack, you know, a little taco, something, just really keep us fed. Because the one thing I didn't learn right away, but I discovered you keep everybody fed, the day goes by real smooth. It's another pro tip. So if anything, put emphasis on making sure you keep everybody fed on the road. It's a huge thing. But yeah, I mean, as far as meals and catering go, it's it. You know, I want to get the menus for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I want to make sure that my crew is not eating chicken tacos for 4 days in a row. You know, that will bum them out again. You know, we want to break it up, and also I got to make sure we're within budgets. You know, catering could get real expensive, and especially in some major cities, it's, you know, labor alone could eat up half your catering budget. So it's important to stay on top of that and making sure that you don't fly over budget, and especially when I got my touring personnel. Our summer tours, somewhere from like 54 to 60 people are on the road. So, and got to make sure we feed them all. Last item on my checkoff list is dressing room, hosp, and shop list. And I know I had that question before about switching things up. So for me, I'm usually a week out from when we're going into venues. I'll send in the shop list that covers my headliners and all my support. Um, Again, I got to govern this budget here, and if they were to go off of everybody's riders that are in all the contracts, it would we just wouldn't have enough money to go around. For everybody's asking for a lot of things, so we have to go in there and filter it and squeeze it down. Um, but you know, we want to do it right, and if we do it right and we get everything that they need and everybody expects or knows what's coming, then it's a smooth day. But that usually goes out like with Revolution. You know, we'll have 4 or 5 shows on and then 2, 3 days off. So usually either on that last show day before our road weekend, you know, Roadie Friday, I'll get those emails out, or on the last day of the day off, I'll get those emails out. But usually the week prior to what I'm going into, I'll send the hosp list out, and that way, any support, if they want to change anything, they know when to get it to me. So that really gives them a chance to uh, update it if they need to. But all in all this information that I gather in my advances ends up in my favorite app of all time, Master Tour. That's not a paid plug or anything, but I'm sure a lot of my music industry friends out here all got jokes about it, and also even me. You know, I'll if you ask me a question, I know it's a Master Tour, I'll probably ask you to go check out Master Tour. But you know, you could upload maps in there. I got information on showers, washing machines, dryers, Wi-Fi passwords, parking instructions, even instructions how to get into the venue. Um, it's such a good tool to communicate with everybody and get the information out. I've learned the more you put into it, the less that everyone bothers you. Overdo it every time. Don't half-ass it, you know, because it's going to bite you in the ass. My people, you know when the sun sets on the tour. I try to get everything in there, and it's always it's a working masterpiece there. One of the questions I received, I won't go over into questions times. All right, yeah, here's a question from a good friend of mine. When venue specs don't meet your rider requests, what approach do you use to deal with that? Well, it happens. You know, I have a handful of venues I know out there that we hit during the summer that can't fit our summer production in. I get with my production manager and my LD or whoever else I need to redesign our production to fit. We're constantly redesigning. You know, I almost felt like last summer was like almost a venue every every week. Another venue, for example, is like Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. That stage is set. You're out in the middle of the water. You can't make it any bigger. There's only so many points you can rig in there, and your audio is different. So you're gonna have to figure out, all right, well, how are we gonna get in there? How are we gonna load our trucks the night before so we're not sitting there trying to unload half the truck just to get to everything that's up in the nose of the truck. And it's just we plan for it. It's we're gonna deal with this, and we can't force venues to change their physical structure to be able to fit our production. I can't change the rigging points on there, and hell, I'm not even going to try to challenge the weight on a rigging point. Last thing I want, to happen is to have anything collapse. That's just bad practice right there. But yeah, we'll get down, we'll plan, we'll talk with the production manager, and we'll also, on a side note too, some of these venues we do know what we're going into. When we plan our production out in the first quarter, we take into account what stages we'll be on during the summer, and if we are able to scale down our production. And that's part of our design. We actually, one of the notes that I had, or one of the requests I had when our design's being done is, can we scale it down, or can we do our full production? So a lot of our design is scalable. And I think that's just smart, trying to plan that. Now, if we get into stadium tours, it's going to be a little bit different, but we might be able to get our full production out there. And also, I mean, as far as things going on with that, audio is easy to scale down if we need to. And the only issue I would see out there that we would come across is power issues. There's enough power for us to run audio and lighting and what we want to do. Sometimes we had to bring in a second generator, and it's good to tackle that stuff as far advanced as you can, because trying to do that stuff a day or two out, it's chaos and it's stress that you don't need. And side note on that is, I try to advance and get all my stuff done before I even step foot out on the road. The more I could get done at home and my home office here before I hit the road, the less I have to do on the road and trying to figure it out. It's all laid out in front of me in my master tour, and I could focus on the unforeseen things that are going to come, because guess what? They're always going to be coming. I mean, one thing when I hire my crew guys, I'm going to hire them off of their experience and what they know. But what I explain to them is, hey, look, I didn't hire you to do a perfect job. I hired you to be able to handle the problems that are going to come up, because I have yet to have a production that's been without any problems. We had so many problems. We've experienced it all. And being able to have guys be able to handle that as it hits and be able to not freak out and lose their cool on it is huge. So that's a big thing for me. Let's see, other questions. Bulldog, how far out do you do a festival advance? Well, depends on the production, really. Also depends if we're headlining or if we're just middle of the bill. Like ACL, they're very they have a very system, my festival advance or whatever, that they have all these dates out there that you gotta, as soon as they start sending the intro emails out, you gotta make sure you get all those dates and get all your stuff in. Cali Roots with Dan Sheehan and Clater and whatnot. We get on the phone with them pretty early. Actually, during Arizona Roots out here, I was sitting with Dan Sheehan, and I was telling him things that I'm thinking about doing production wise for Cali Roots. That was in May, but now it's being moved to October, which I'm thankful that's still happening. But I start talking about those things way out when we're headlining. But yeah, middle of the bill, a lot of times, we're limited on our production. We don't bring in the audio. We might not be able to have anything that we could fly. It might just be a ground lighting package, but if the changeovers are really tight, they're going to probably cut your ground package. So the best you could do is really just get the risers out there and have some lights. But half the times in the middle of the bill, you're playing in daylight, so there isn't really too much lights that you can get too crazy with. Let's see. Ben, to add to Thomas's question about the respects of the tour manager, do's and don'ts for support band tour managers and the bands under them. Being sneaky, lying or bullshitting and trying to pull a fast one on me, sneaking people in, that's a huge no. Look, I know everybody wants all their friends in backstage and whatnot, but when I see somebody taking their laminates or doing stuff like that and trying to sneak people in, you lose all my respect on that. If the venue comes back to me and complains about it, now you're losing. Now you have that stigmatization that you're tour manager that sneaks people in. If you really need to get people in and stuff, either go do a ticket buy and then ask for a pass, or if you're outside your allotment. I'm trying not to get too specific on any situations I've dealt with out there, but that's a big one for me. Just don't pull a fast one. And the other thing is don't park your bus where the headliner spot is. Make sure we get in there first and handle our business, and just I would stay out of headliner's way, production way until it's time. Just respect the space. Guest list things, get those in when I ask them. For me, for my support bands, a lot of times I'm asking for guest lists by 12 o'clock day of show, which I'll get into why as I go through my day of show. It's just, you just have to be straightforward. If you need something, ask for it and be okay if it's no. I know you're trying to impress your artist most of the time, but you can only do the best you can and at your limitations. And if they're not happy with it, it's not you that, it's going to be on them. You just know you did the best you can and you asked, and that's it. It's what a lot of people, I feel, they take a lot of that stress and they take it personally. And you shouldn't. I used to do that, and now it's back with a lot of, like, I go back to the mental health and my anger issues. I was looking at, like, oh, I'm not able to get 5 more people in. I look at it as a personal failure. I didn't figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. But at the end of the day, I'm like, look, I know I did the best I could. I gave 100%. If I felt like I have to ask it, yeah, of course I'm going to feel guilty or something. But if I know I gave it 100% and that's just the answer, it is what it is, and I'm okay with that. And as soon as I learned how to do that and accept it, tour managing became even easier. So, Duder Man, what program do you use for checklist? Well, I just use Notes, to be honest. It's easy to synchronize between my iDevices. I could jump on my laptop and look at it. If you want to get more complex, which I don't suggest, but OmniFocus, which is a task management system too. If you look at the bottom of the links here, I got some ebooks and audiobooks. One of the things that I read, that was those 2 audiobooks down there, were 2 very important things to me. One was being getting things done. It was a system that a lot of people that use high rise and whatnot, it's the theory behind that, and it's very important. It's to get all the stuff out of your head, to get it down into a checklist, into something, so you don't dwell on it and use all that energy to keep thinking about it. Get it out. It's a very good system. How do you divide advanced responsibilities between TM, PM, LD? Do you stay CC'd on all communications? Well, usually I'll initiate the advances. I usually have my production manager on CC, and when I get the response from the production manager or whatnot, if it's something that I need to bring in my LD on or something, we'll bring in the LD. But for the most part, my production manager Joe King could answer a lot of more technical questions if it goes even beyond me. That's how our system works. But at times too, in the past tours where I had stage managers as well, I would probably CC them on it. But any other information as far as specific towards lights, because I do have a specific lighting section. Even I asked for the contact of the lighting, local lights. I'll forward that over to my LD so they can have that information if they need it for anything. But for the most part, they'll keep me CC'd on anything. If they're having casual discussions, sure, whatever. But when it starts getting into invoices, money, and all this other stuff, yeah, I'm CC'd on it, and I got final say on it. But for the most part, we handle everything pretty much in those first few advanced emails. And like I said, I can't stress enough: over communicate, overdo it. It's like writing a whole book. My advanced emails are long. They're not short. I try to dictate everything out in an email so it just gets handled. Let's see. What's the best way to get on the radar of a band TM for a support slot? Well, I mean, if you're looking at trying to get onto the production side of things, I think that's what the question is. Either make yourself known with management, and a lot of the contacts on a lot of these pages, or a lot of band pages, have direct links to management, or they'll have a little contact form. And to be honest, somebody is receiving those. They might not answer you back, but they'll receive it. And if you want trying to cold call them to be a TM, that might be able to get your foot in the door. The other thing is keep your subscribed to like Bobnet, and send your resume in on all those TM gigs and whatnot. That's the best way I would go about it. But most of the TMs I see out there are pretty close to their bands, and everybody. It's a position that you really want somebody who's real tight with everybody. Let's see. Blake Jameson, what challenges have you faced touring internationally with regard to language barrier, currency, culture, etc.? How do you manage that kind of stuff? Well, let's tackle the language barrier. Again, most of the people that we're out there working with, we're not the first English-speaking band that's come through their venue. So there's usually somebody who speaks English. And if not, when I'm outside the country, I'm good at pointing at things, and I do speak German and really crappy Japanese, but enough to embarrass everybody. But enough to really, get by and do what we need to do. Music's easy, it's you got speakers, you got audio, you turn it on, you do this, you do that. We got the times, schedules. It's all set. As far as currency coming in, I'll have a ledger for whatever currency I'm working with. I got the euros, British pounds, Swiss francs, Japanese yen and whatnot. If I'm jumping around all those countries, I'm gonna have a separate ledger for each one. And then when I take that currency and go deposit it into the bank, then that becomes a general ledger item that goes from this ledger to the US dollars ledger, because then that's when it transfers over. So I could be turning in, I don't know, let's say, I don't know what the currency exchange is these days for half the stuff out there, but let's say, for every euro, it's worth $1.10. So, I turn in 100 euros, and I get like $105 because there's obviously bank fees and whatnot. That's, I know that's the general ledger item. It goes from one item to the next. Let's see. Alex, tell us some good Punisher stories. Yeah, there's a lot of Punishers out there. I'm gonna just tell you, you just want to do the best you can to keep them on the other side. It's hard. I got a lot of stories about that. Don't want to name anybody specific, but yeah, maybe let me think about it. I might come up with the story, but let me get into basically the show day. Our day starts roughly around 7 a.m. Usually trying to grab breakfast and some porcelain time, if you know what I mean. We shake off to sleep and start making ourselves at home in the venue. Usually meet up with the PM, walk the venue, wrap up any more discussions that need to be for on items that were decided day of show. That could be like VIP sections, or you're doing a meet and greet where we're going to have it, and just kind of how the flow is going to go out through today. My PM, my LD, and crew chief are on deck with the riggers to mark all their points, and then lights start coming in. Usually when the lights come in, that's when my production cases come in, so I can start getting my dressing room signs up and a lot of my day sheets and whatnot. But I usually try to get them about a couple hours before we start bringing backline and risers. Then all that stuff comes in. Get it all set up. And usually give those guys about a 3-hour build before it's like even sound check time. And usually right around that time when they start building, that's usually when I get all my tickets and comps from like the box office, and it's because somebody needs to sort them out. I need to sign. I'm going to have a pretty big guest list usually. With Revolution, that can be anywhere from 100 to 200 guests. They all seem to have requests for everyone. And the funny thing is, this is like the only job that I've tried to hand off multiple times, and I just can't seem to hand it off. I want it done correctly. If you don't do it right the first time and do good, but I mean, you're going to hear complaints. You're going to hear, oh, how come my artist or how come my guest didn't do this or whatever. So I do it. I knock it out. I get it done right. I don't have to hear from anybody on it. I know what everybody wants and what they need. I could kind of feel it out, sign them their tickets, stuff the envelopes, get the credentials in there. And for the most part, I might only hear 1 or 2 requests if I do it that way. So, but that usually takes about a couple hours out of the middle of my day, and that usually leads right into around sound check time with the guys and whatnot. So, and actually, it usually goes a little after sound check. It gets closer to the doors because I got a couple of my guys that don't get their guest list in on time. But I got to beat the doors. I'm running around. I'm communicating with my production manager, make sure production's good. And if anybody knows me, my biggest pet peeve is being late. I do not like holding doors. Holding doors is, sometimes it's necessary, but there's a little piece of my heart just gets ripped out if I cannot get the doors open on time. But once we get to the doors, and they're open, this calm kind of sets in over the whole entire tour production. Everybody, okay, doors open. We're not working on the stage anymore. Guys go back to the bus. They take naps. People are in catering, eating dinner. Everybody's just relaxing and chilling out. And we usually get about a good, maybe hour, 2 hours of just calm time. And then it's time to start executing the show. Get the bands on stage, get the changeovers, make sure people are hitting their times. Make sure you're communicating with the other tour managers and making sure everybody's going to hit their times. Bands that go over on times and impede on changeover time, and other bands or tour managers and artists that will eventually lose my respect if it's done over and over. One time it might happen and it gets corrected. Great, whatever. We move on. But you do it over and over. You're gonna have a hard time working with me, and it's gonna be really rigid. So we like to keep things smooth, keep on schedule, and I think a lot of the production people out there do understand that. It's a big thing. We have curfews that we can't, especially being outdoor shows on the weekdays, might be a 10 p.m. curfew that we can't go past. And if we do, it could be fines up to $1,000 a minute. And if we're going over, 3 minutes because your artist spent 5 extra minutes on stage, it's $3,000 I got to cough up. I'm not going to do that, and I don't want to do that. And also, if we have any technical issues that's going to push us into curfew, then we're on the phone with the city trying to get permission last minute to, go past curfew. And I hate doing that. It just, I just like to try to stick to the schedule. And I think most people know that I'm very schedule oriented during the day. But during the show, I usually get my ticket counts throughout the night if it's not sold out, and I'll ask for pre-settlement usually about midnight or mid show day, because most of the time promoter reps usually have, or production managers or promoter reps usually have most of their expenses in. And I take the pre-settlement and I look at and I got my own spreadsheet for settlements. So I start punching in numbers to make sure that we're on the same page. Helps me double check their numbers, that I could take their numbers and repeat it. Now, if it's a flat guarantee, I could be a little bit more loose with it, but a lot of these are versus deals or door deals, and it's going to be net after expenses and whatnot. And I gotta, you gotta double check the numbers on there. You gotta see what's going on. But for the most part, you got to pick your battles too. You might be over budget on some item, but you might be under budget on another. I look at the overall budget. Say it's a $90,000 budget for the production of the show, and I'm about $3,000 over on advertising, but the overall budget came in at $85,000. I'm probably not going to stress on it. And most of the production managers and people I work with know that. We work together like that, and that's just part of having that relationship too. But I'll do a pre-settlement, so at least all my math is good and all my numbers are good. So at the end of the night, when it's all said and done and box office is done, we'll all I have to do is just put in the final numbers for box office and any other little minor expense changes if anything's changed, and settlement gets done pretty quick, because otherwise, I've sat there for hours after a show trying to settle things out, and that's it takes a long time. But sometimes you'll have discrepancies, and I go back to that whole contract thing. It's maybe both sides are not understanding the wording. Maybe they have different interpretation of how to execute it. So you gotta hammer that out. And if you get to a point where you just can't settle, I usually end up sending it back to the booking agent to finish. I don't like doing that. It's usually kind of like, but if I get to a point where we just can't get to a settlement to the end, usually I will send it back and let them figure it out. But once complete, I send it off to the team, let my merch seller know how many was in attendance, so he can add the number to his settlement to see how well merch sold that night. We measure our performance on merch based off of how many we sold per head. And then we finish loadout. Usually takes us at most 2 hours after the show ends. And I try to make sure my crew can get some showers and hopefully a good night's sleep, because we'll have to do it all over again in about 6 hours, and that's pretty rough. So let's see. Oh, got some more questions here. Well, Ball Dog, I think I answered that when Amy asked me, what are your career aspirations after tour managing? Well, I mean, I do have managing. I'm managing 2 bands, so that that'll continue. But I don't know. I kind of want to do kind of into the whole pilot thing lately. And if anybody's been on my Instagram, you see I like to fly around a lot. It's just kind of something that's been real fun. Let's see. Any other questions out there? Well, I'm getting towards the end of it. I just kind of wanted to give you guys the, how I ended up here, some of my theories, some of my practical knowledge. And now, just give you some final thoughts on this. As for tour managers, sometimes we have to make decisions that don't please everyone. It's part of the job, and it's okay if it doesn't please everyone. I'm always going to try to do what's best for the tour. Look at it as a machine that supports a lot of people. Not only it supports the local crew and staff and promoters. It supports my road crew, supports my drivers, it supports my management, my booking agents. There's a lot of people that rely on this tour to make sure it happens. And when you're the captain of the ship, it's a lot of responsibility, and could be unpopular at times, and it's okay. And then sometimes, with that being said, I've messed up too. I've fucked up pretty bad a few times, and it might be hard to own it, but own it. It's the fastest way to get past it and learn from it, and see what you could do better. And it's experience. I'm always constantly learning. I'm always going to be learning, and I'm just happy for that. And then I think anybody that thinks they know it all has not learned it all. So I remember it makes me think of stories. Like I remember the first time I heard the term spot op, I was like, yeah, I think we need that. And then later I was explained to me that it was a spot op, was a light operator, a spotlight operator, and I was like, oh, okay. But I remember things like that. I also remember my first shed tour. I was freaking out a little, maybe a lot. But I know in my head if it wasn't gonna kill me, I'm gonna be okay. And I know failing wasn't gonna kill me, so I'm gonna be okay. I embraced it, and I moved forward, and I kept an open mind, and I wasn't afraid to let people know I didn't know. They become more helpful if they know they can help you, and I think that's just something that is important. Just be open, over communicate, and carry a very logical mind. That's important. That helps kind of figure things out. And advice, I want to give to people is we're all going through some hard times right now, and we're all doing this together. We do need to try and be patient and take care of each other. I know in the long run, this can pay off and make everyone stronger. I'm lucky to have Revolution as my main tour family. They've been very supportive of me over the years, and I've seen the ups and downs of Bryan Sandell, and it's like family. I cherish that. Um, my advice to anybody else out there looking for this gig, find that, stick with them through thick and thin. That's the most important part. You become valuable. Um, so now I'm kind of opened up to some questions here. Oh, what about the first shed tour made me freak out? Well, the fact that I didn't know, like at that time, I was familiar with clubs. It was the unknown. I didn't know what I was going to walk into. I felt like, with power distros, I didn't even know that. I thought that was just supplied. I was used to that at club levels. Power's already there. I remember one venue I showed up and they're like, "Well, you didn't advance power distro," and I was like, "What? Uh, isn't that just default?" And they were like, "No," and I was like, "Shit. All right, well, how do we get power here?" So it was things like that I was learning along the way. Um, I started getting more into union houses, and working with the union is intimidating. Sometimes you just don't know. You hear all the stories. They're going to push your car into the bay there, or they're going to do this or slash your tires or something. They're not. You get with the steward, work with them. Again, it's another partnership deal. You communicate with them and you show them respect, they'll show respect right back at you. It's just learning. But yeah, freaking the part that I freaked out the most was like, am I doing this right? Am I going to be a complete failure? And I wasn't, and I don't think once you get into it, I think a lot of people will be able to do it. Um, I don't think there's little things, but if you got some club shows, and just regular production under your belt, you got it. Let's see. Oh, Sean, going back to FAA approval for lasers, how long does that process normally take on average, and how often do do beer cakes get as I said, red line from your hospital letter? Well, only at one festival I could think where we've been denied the beer kegs on, but yeah, we're Revolution is very environmentally aware, so we do a lot of things to try to avoid waste. You know, we avoid using a lot of plastic and whatnot. So the beer kegs is kind of a thing that helps us get to that. You know, I rather give somebody a solo cup that I know they're gonna probably use it for 3 or 4 times than you know, you know, 3 or 4 bottles of beer cans. You know, we could have recycle bins around and whatnot. So as far as the FAA stuff goes, you know, that goes out a month in advance. That could take a couple weeks. It really depends on what part of the country and what airspace you're after. But I believe there's a western and eastern division, and just need to send in a request, give them which way the stage is pointing and where you're going to be shooting, and types of lasers and who your contact is. And then right before the show, our contacts usually any centers. The United States is broken up into a lot of different centers, like Arizona. I'm in Albuquerque Center, but you know, they might contact them. They might contact local towers and just let them know, hey, show's about to begin, laser production. We're going to be going till such and such time, and they go, okay. So then they'll vector all their flights around it, make sure that nobody flies into them. Why are all the stagehands and production guys and gals edgy with attitude? I don't, you know, I can't say everybody is. I think every once in a while, it's just like dealing with anybody else out there. You know, any groups of people out there in any situation, you're always going to run into some attitudes and here and there, and it's just you got to figure out a way to navigate through that. Again, I lean on Joe King. Is very valuable. He's a charmer, so he could navigate himself through all that and be able to help out with uh, smoothing things over. So I can't say they're all edgy, and for the most part, everybody's pretty stoked to be working on the productions, and especially when we advance them really well and do a really good job of making sure everybody knows what's going on. Uh, that helps, and I think um, that might be a little bit of it. It's the lack of knowledge that if people don't have a schedule, they don't have everything laid out in front of them, and they don't have some guidance or something to go forward, that's where I see the attitudes kind of come up, you know. And they're like, well, this wasn't advanced, or that wasn't, or now I'm doing this and all that. That's where I start seeing the attitude. So again, over communicate, you know, make sure you lay it all out. Um, yeah, this is a good one. Any advice for a female TM when dealing with mostly male musicians and promoters? Yeah, that's a challenge. You know, I've worked with a couple of female tour managers, and I've had side conversations with them on this. And honestly, if you want to, you can reach out to me via email or whatnot to even go further on this. But it's I worked with Stephanie, who I remember her first tour with the Common Kings, and you know, I gave her a little bit of a rough time just to kind of help break her in a little bit. But she turned out to be one of the best, awesomest tour managers and tour moms out there. You know, she moved on to do a lot of cool other acts. My favorite, she's done Die Antwoord, and I'm like, how do I get that gig? That was rad. So she's moved on, and she's been the powerhouse. But I think you're gonna I feel like there's going to be times that you're going to run into. It's this. I think it's not only this industry, but I think it's a lot of industries that you're going to run into challenges of the boys club thing. And, just keep doing the job as best as you can. Don't act on it, and just do the job, and show those boys that they're dumb. I guess and that's all advice I ever gave anybody. Just don't let that shit really get into you. And honestly, if you keep doing the best job you possibly can, and this goes for everyone, your phone's always going to be ringing. I do my phone. I haven't had to go search for a job in, I don't know, 14 years. I just make sure I do the best I possibly can. I feel like the reward on that's always been somebody's always asking for me to go out on tour with them, or come over to their side, or do something for them, and I'll just keep that in mind. So that's my advice. Crazy unexpected situation you ran into on a tour and how you dealt with it. Trying to think of things. I remember when we went to Tahiti. That was a challenge. A lot of things production wise that we advanced, we would say, "Hey, we want this," and then we get there and it's this, something like completely different, and we almost didn't know if we were going to get the show off the ground. And the crappy part about that is you're on an island in the middle of the Pacific that's, nowhere near anything else. So you had to make it work. You had to MacGyver that, we had a lot of people that were counting on this. So we've done that. I remember a show in Guam where we lost half the speaker system, and we had a lot of upset people that were pretty bummed about the show, and we just had to get through it. It's just being able to deal with it without freaking out, being calm. That's the biggest thing. That's even something I learned as a pilot, is in emergency situations, the last thing you want to do is freak out. So have that calm demeanor, like I was talking about in the beginning of my whole deal. Handle it and just do the best you can. And if it doesn't, it doesn't always work out, it's okay. Just know that as long as you gave it 110%, I think you did the best you can. But I don't have any, besides like Tahiti and Guam and some other stories. I don't really have too many specific stories, let's see. Let's see. That's a funny question. Lot of funny questions there. Well, I think most of these questions I answered one way or another, but so Alex wants to hear some Give Thanks tour memories. That's all the way back in 2012. That's where I met him through the Roots guys. I think yeah, that was good. That was a good fun experience. That was the first time I was doing Revolution. I remember we ran into the Expendables in Atlanta. Me at the time and the tour manager, we tied one on pretty quick, and in a sense almost pretty much embarrassed myself in front of Eric Rockbonny on that. And yeah, that story seems to get brought up quite a bit. So that there's that story. But all in all, I think if anybody has any more questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to help everyone out and try to be a better tour manager. Another question there with the Tahiti situation and upset fans. How did band management tackle the post-show refunds, etc.? No, I mean, the show still went on. We did everything we can, and we still produced the show. We still had audio. It was just one-legged audio, and that was for Guam and Tahiti. So we got it up and going. You know, it was definitely the most interesting situation, and there was no need to refund. You know, again, I we just try to, you know, my production manager, myself, we'll fix it. We'll power through it. And you know, for all the managers and artists out there, if you're looking for a TM, those are the qualities that I would look for as a manager. Somebody who could handle these situations regardless and go through them. I don't call my manager going, "Hey, how do I do this or do that?" I just handle it, and I'll call them after and say, "Hey, this happened, and this is how we fixed it, so we're good." Um, that's basically you as a tour manager out there. You are you are the captain of that tour. That is your tour. You know, there's not really any way out. Everybody's looking to you for answers. You know, so you know, exercise and make sure you have the ability to answers. But you know, at the same time, don't be afraid to fail here and there. That's how you learn. So, uh, anyways, I think hour and 35 minutes of talking here. I'm about. I think I covered everything I'd like to cover for this 101 session. Maybe it'll be a 102. Who knows? We'll see if Rootfire asks me to come back again. But I appreciate everybody for tuning in. And like I said, there's a bunch of links below to a bunch of resources I use, companies I prefer, audio, lighting, busing, trucking, soft goods, travel agents, different travel agencies I've worked with, and some good audiobooks. You got It's Your Ship, which was a good management technique book. It kind of really teaches you how to not micromanage and how to empower your crew to be able to do the job that you hired them to do, and let them do it the way they need, you know, way they see it done, as long as they achieve the goals that we're trying to achieve. And also make sure we go have fun. You know, on Revolution tours, we have great days off. You know, that's our rewards. We do wonderful dinners. We're a family out there, and that's really important, you know. So thanks, appreciate it. uh Hope to see some of you out on the road, and I'll catch you next time.